All right, welcome to this special edition of HBCU Gameday Prime, and for the first time, we are in 4K. And I couldn't be happier than to be joined by the head coach of Florida A&M University, head coach Willie Simmons. Coach Simmons, how's it going?
Oh, it's going well, considering.
Yeah, that statement says a lot. Last time I saw you, we were on the field for a spring practice. And next thing you know, all that stopped and everybody's gone. So what's been going on with FAMU football since the stoppage?
Well, obviously, like everyone else, we were forced to leave campus, obviously, to get our guys back to their respective homes, try to get out of harm's way. And, classes went virtual, just like they did all around the country. As coaches, we were forced to, remove ourselves from the offices. And so we began this life of virtual learning, virtual meetings through Zoom, everything virtual. And so it's been I don't want to use the word challenging. It's been unique, to say the least. And so, but it's, we've tried to do the best job we could as coaches to ensure that our players are still able to be successful in the classroom, with their mental head space. That's a big piece of it, just continuing to check up on our guys from a mental standpoint, because as athletes, we're used to a routine. And that routine has been, stripped from us, in an unforeseen way, something that none of us could have prepared for. So I commend my coaching staff. I commend the administration for, putting a plan together, a plan that we could all follow, and it's allowed us to still be able to get some work done during this time. And when we're finally able to resume what will be, I guess, the new normal, hopefully we'll be ahead of the curve.
Well, Coach, let's back up just a little bit. You've added an addition to the family since we last spoke. Just talk about that. How is the wife doing?
Well, she's doing fine. I joke with her, saying I think that she invented COVID. It just so happened that the moment the virus kind of hit us and forced all these changes, we just had a baby. And so, obviously, I would have been working. I would have been in the middle of spring practice. She would have had to basically raise the baby, take care of the baby by herself while I'm working every day. And now I'm forced to be home with her every day and help with the baby. So, perfect timing, I guess, in some senses. But, again, the baby's doing phenomenal. She's a bundle of joy. The wife she's maintaining as much as she can. With the newborn that doesn't want to leave her side, she's still getting a good feel for daddy at this point. Everything is mommy, 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 which is the way it usually is.
Right.
But again, I'm enjoying this because the silver lining in all of this is that these are things I normally wouldn't be able to experience. My previous two, my 3-year-old and 5-year-old that we've had together, I've been coaching, and I really haven't had that chance to just be there every day and see the daily growth. Every shirt that I have being full of baby spit up and all those things that you just, that you enjoy with fatherhood. So that's the blessing in disguise in all of this, that I've really been able to enjoy some great family time that the coaching usually takes away. And it's really put a lot of things in perspective. All
right, Coach. It's a gorilla sitting in this room, a big elephant sitting in this room, and we might as well get to it. Ryan Stanley graduated. Very well decorated, one of the most decorated quarterbacks in FAMU history, holds several records. Who steps into that role now, Coach?
Well, right now we have 4 guys that are battling for that starting spot. Rashawn McKay was the backup quarterback last year. He's the incumbent. He's earned the right to take the first snaps of spring practice with the first unit. He came in last year against North Carolina A&T, won the game in overtime, played the entire Morgan State game, won that game on the road. And so he's shown the ability to lead this football team. He's a very hard-working young man, really understands the offense, and has a natural leadership ability about himself that I think the guys will gravitate to. Obviously, the one that everyone is asking about is John Holcomb, the transfer from Kansas State, 6'5", 245-pound guy, cannon for an arm, true dual threat guy, can do a lot of great things with the football. And the not being able to finish spring practice probably hurt him the most. He would have been the guy that would have benefited greatly from those 10 extra practices that we were allowed to have. And so I'm sure he's chomping at the bits to really get back into that competition to show what he can do, in orange and green. LaJohn Howard, a guy that we signed out of New Orleans in our first class, probably has the most arm talent of everyone here. And so he's a guy that is really developing his body, really maturing as a young man who has all the physical gifts. Now it's just a matter of his maturity and his ability to lead the program that he has to improve upon the most. But again, he's not going to go away quietly. And then Cameron Sapp, the freshman that we signed last year out of Jacksonville, extremely athletic young man, 6'2". He's probably put on 15 to 20 pounds in the year that he's been here. But he's another dual threat guy, probably the best natural runner of everyone in the group. Can throw the football as well. So it's a good problem to have. We have 4 really talented young men who all kind of bring a little bit something different to the table. And that's the fun part about coaching now, is to see how the offense will now metamorphosize into fitting those guys. I think we did a pretty good job of building the offense around Ryan's strengths, but after losing him, which was a huge loss, we now have to figure out how best to get those guys in position to be successful. But whoever ends up winning the job, and that may not be decided until week 1, possibly into week 2 or 3, depends. But whoever is calling the shots, it will be a guy that we feel can lead this program and continue to grow it to the level that we all feel like it can get to.
Coach, jumping subjects a little bit away from your depth and as we were going, this year we only had one HBCU player drafted in the NFL draft. The NFL had set up an HBCU combine, and it greatly crippled the visibility of the athletes to not have that combine. But going forward, how important would that combine be for HBCU athletes?
I think it'll be something that guys can look forward to. Obviously at this level, many of the individuals who graduate from HBCUs or play at this level don't feel they get the opportunities for exposure that many of the Division I FBS players or Power 5 student athletes get. So for them to have the HBCU combine that's specific to the member schools in the SWAC, the MEAC, and then of course you add Tennessee State and Hampton into that, and even some Division II guys, it gives those guys a chance to show NFL personnel what they can do. I think you'll find some diamonds in the rough out of that group. Some guys that can run really fast 40 times, some guys that can jump out of the gym, some guys that have great agility, or they're strong as an ox that's going to throw a 225 a bunch of times. So oftentimes these guys get knocked for what the NFL scouts deem as low quote-unquote competition, because we're playing FCS competition. But when you can put a guy on the clock, he's not running against the competition. He's not running against himself, and he's showing you how fast he is. He's showing you how high he can jump, how strong his arm is if you put him in a personal workout. So guys like Ryan Stanley, Marcus Williams, the guys that were invited to this past combine that didn't happen, we're really looking forward to it. And I think it's something that hopefully the NFL will continue to do, because I do think it'll give them a chance to get eyes on a few more guys and maybe increase some of those draft numbers, that we didn't have this year.
And moving forward and feeding right off of Marcus. Marcus graduated, got his degree, of course, and leaving a starting spot at receiver, but you also get back Chad Hunter, who was hobbled by injuries last year, but we know what Chad can do. Just talk about your receiving core as you saw it developing in the spring for the time you saw it.
Well, that's one of the strong spots on this team. We've kind of dubbed this group the Rack Boys 2.0. And of course all of our true Rattler fans know the impact that the original Rack Boys, Jacquay Nunley, Kanan Lamb, Demetrius Bendros, all those guys had on the program back in the late 90s when the Gulf Coast offense was scoring more points than the law should allow. And this group has a lot of those same attributes. First of all, they're very unselfish. That's the one thing about the group. They don't care who catches the balls. They don't care who gets the praise. One week it might be Xavier Smith. Next week it might be Chad Hunter. Next week it might be David Manigo. Next week it might be Azende Ray. Then you got guys like Chris Sanders, the freshman that we signed last year, who shows a lot of promise. Guys like Donovan Mobley, or even you throw some of the running backs into that equation, Bishop Bonnet. So we have a plethora of guys that we can spread the ball around and get to, and that's the luxury of this offense. We want to get the ball in space to those guys, let them do what they do. But it's a good problem to have, to try to figure out how to evenly distribute the football to so many talented guys. But I think this group has a chance to be one of, if not the best groups at this level.
Well, great. And you return center Crawford will be the mainstay of the offensive line. How did your offensive line look during the spring for the time that you saw?
Well, we returned 4 guys that started every game last year. You know, Tariq Akbar at left tackle, Keenan Forbes was the first-team All-Conference guy, All-American candidate at right guard, Andre Regis at right tackle, and then, of course, Brian Crawford returns as a center. Calvin Ashley, you know, our 5-star signee from last year, returns and, of course, gives us a lot of depth and is going to push Regis for that starting spot at the right tackle spot. Jalen Spady is a guy that will probably plug into that spot vacated by Tyrell Reed. He's a guy that can play center and guard, you know, so that's an asset to an offense to have a versatile guy. And then Orlando Higgs, the second, is a guy that we signed from Wake Forest, transferred to us from Wake Forest. He was going through the spring, having a really productive spring. He's a guard by trade, but because of an injury to Crawford early in the spring, he was forced to kind of move to center a little bit. A little bit of an adjustment, being that he had never snapped before, but again, builds his quality depth at that position. So now we go into the season feeling like we have 3 guys who can play that center position, and all of them can play guard as well. So again, building quality depth up front, but I truly expect those guys to take a quantum leap over what they showed last year. You know, they have the talent. I truly believe the talent's there. We have the size, the athleticism. Now it's just a matter of them gelling together, really, you know, putting their identity together, what type of offensive line they want to be, allowing us to run the ball a lot better than we did last year. Because if we can improve in that area and still stay as efficient throwing the football as we were this past year, I think the sky's the limit for this offense.
Coach, you had a couple of big additions to the defensive secondary this year. Some big additions, especially at the safety position. Now you may have 2 of the best safeties in the country, bar none, any level. Just talk about the safety position first.
Well, obviously, you know, with the design of our defense, we ask a lot about safeties. You know, obviously the goal is to get the ball to them. You know, our nickelbacks and our 2 safeties. So typically you're going to see those guys lead the team in tackles. You know, so you look at last year's team, Terry Jefferson and Marquise Bell were 2 of our 3 leading tacklers on the team, and that's by design. And so obviously losing Terry was a big loss. Andrew Hines has been a guy that's been a 2-year starter for us at safety. And so we have to replace 2 really good football players. Cortez Reed really did a great job stepping in last year, and I think he's ready to take the next step and possibly going into that strong safety spot that advance the field. And then, of course, Marquise Bell returns as that All-American, probably the best defender in the conference coming back. You know, if there's a better one, I'd like to see him. And then you add the freshmen in the transfers that we signed. You know, Trey Bishop was a heralded guy coming out of high school, another All-American coming out of Dawson, Georgia, and then Jaleel Kaur, you know, 3-star recruit, as well as Ben Onwuzo, you know, a 3-star recruit. So, you know, we have 2 top 150 players in the state of Florida coming in this fall, as well as a former All-American coming into the secondary. So, again, just trying to increase our speed and depth on the back end, because obviously that's the last line of defense. But we feel good about the guys we have. Now it's just a matter of seeing them, again, take that next step with the additions coming in and learning the scheme, understanding the design of our defense, and hoping to continue to be a ball-hawking style of defense.
Coach, you lose a leader on the defensive line in DeMontre. How do you replace a guy like that?
Well, again, you don't replace one guy. You know, you can't replace a Ryan Stanley with one guy. You can't replace DeMontre Moore, Terry Jefferson, and Elijah Richardson. So what you have to do is you hopefully develop a lot of younger guys to kind of step in and fill those vacancies, because, you know, DeMontre was an athletic guy. So you hope you have an athletic guy that can come in and replace that. You know, he was a great leader. So you hope another guy possibly can come in and be a great leader. You know, he was really good against the run. So you hope you got a run stopper coming in. So you try to do it by committee, and that's what we feel like we have. So one of our points of emphasis in this recruiting class was to beef up our interior defensive line. And you see that with the 3 guys that we signed. And so really excited about Donald Hall, you know, coming in. He went through spring, the 5 practices that we were able to get in. Transfer guy, won a national championship last year at the JUCO ranks. Very athletic young man, very tenacious, can really rush the passer and play well against the run. And then the guys we signed out of high school, Gentle Hunt, you know, big strong guy out of Gainesville, Florida. Malcolm Moultrie, you know, out of Pensacola, Florida, and then Christoph Troop right here in Tallahassee. So bringing in 4 close to 300-pound guys, we think will really do wonders for our defense on that interior, because obviously we talked about the back end being the last line of defense. Obviously those interior guys is the first line of defense, so we want to make sure we're strong up there, be able to create a new line of scrimmage, and allow those linebackers to roam around and make plays.
And another mainstay on the defense that graduated, Elijah Richardson. I mean, just a great guy all around, a great guy, the kind of guys you like to coach. What will the linebacker core look like for the next year?
Well, first off, Elijah Richardson is not a guy you like to coach. He's a guy you love to coach. He's the type of guy that doesn't come around very often. In my 14 years of coaching, I can probably name two other guys, who brought that type of leadership, who brought that type of work ethic, tenacity, just attention to detail, as in Elijah Richardson. And when the pro scouts came, obviously they came to talk about Ryan Stanley. They wanted to talk about Marcus Williams. I told them, if I gotta hang my head or bet my paycheck on one guy, it's going to be Elijah Richardson. I think all those other guys could definitely play at that level, and I hope they get an opportunity. But Elijah Richardson is that guy that you just know he's going to be successful. Whatever he chooses to do in life, he's going to be successful because of all those attributes and those intangibles that he brings to the table. So people would think Ryan Stanley is probably our biggest loss. I would venture to say Elijah Richardson is, because again, you're talking about a guy that the moment I walk out of that locker room, it's in out his locker room. He was the unquestioned leader of that football team from a tenacity standpoint, just really getting the guys to understand what the process really looked like. And he did a great job of carrying the message that I, as a head coach, brought to the program into those guys. So that's what we're probably going to miss the most. But we have some athletic, talented guys at that position. Demetrius Powell is a guy that can really, really run. Darius Fagan, transfer from Syracuse, who played some for us last year, looks to step into that role that Elijah vacated. And then obviously Derek Mayweather returns. He's been a 3-year starter for us. He's a guy that we're going to look to now for that leadership. He's really trimmed down. He's about 225, 230 now after playing at about 245 last season. So, think he'll move around a lot better. But again, I think the production will be there that Elijah gave us. I'm just looking forward to seeing who will step up into that leadership role that hopefully saw how he led, saw how he was accountable, saw how he did the right things on and off the field, challenged his teammates to do the same. Hopefully one of our guys can kind of carry that forward, because I think every great team needs great internal leadership, not just great leadership from the coaches and everyone around, but internal leadership from the seniors, from the guys that are going to see the field every Saturday.
Awesome. And finally, of course, we don't have to ask a question about punting as long as he's able to stand up right. We know Chris Fadul is going to get that job done. But you lose Yahia Ali, and did you have some kickers in camp during the spring?
We did. So Julius Duarte is a guy that served as the backup kicker and punter this past season, and so Duarte will step into that role as the primary place kicker. Obviously, Christopher Fadul can handle both of those roles, but we like to allow him to focus on punting. He's the best punter in the country, and so we don't want to overexert him, and use that leg kicking off and kicking field goals and extra points and all those things. He's more than willing to do that and able to do it if we need him to. But we're very pleased with what we saw from Duarte during the spring. We have a freshman kicker coming in. That's going to give us some depth at that position, and so we think we'll have 3 guys back there that can handle the kicking responsibilities, kickoffs, field goals, extra points, and then let Fadul again focus on the punting aspect. So feel really good about our special teams game, the specialist. Of course, Christian Mastromico returns as our primary snapper. Fadul returns as our punter. Azende Ray returns as a kick returner and punt returner. And so again, just losing our lead and returning everyone else bodes well for the special teams area. So we feel like we have a lot of quality depth returning. That's the biggest thing about this team that I'm looking forward to seeing, how much we grow from last year to this year. We only lost really 3 starters on offense, lost about 4 or 5 guys that played a bunch on defense, and really lost 1 specialist in Yahia Ali. So a lot of returning guys who are in their 3rd year in the program now, who really understand what our program philosophy is, what it means to be a Rattler, who embraces our 7 Fs, and who's looking forward to leaving no doubt this year as to who the best team in black college football is.
And I like that. That leads right into the next question. What does leave no doubt mean, Coach?
Well, obviously last year, we caught a lot of flack for our national championship. We didn't name ourselves national champions. I mean, Black College Sports Network did, and so all we did was just put on a shirt and have a celebration for what people named us. They named us Black College National Champs, and so it obviously got a lot of people riled up, ruffled some feathers. I had to answer some questions as to why we were named national champions, and so we said, okay, this year we understood that last year we didn't have the ability to to earn it on the field per se because of the postseason ban, but we don't have that this year. You know, there's no ban. There's nothing restricting us from being outright MEAC champs. There's nothing restricting us from representing the MEAC in the Celebration Bowl. You know, so the motto for our team this year was, hey, you know, people wanted to question it last year. This year, let's leave no doubt. You know, let's play it on the field. Let's show everyone what type of program we're capable of being, and the only way to do that is to win every single day. We can't expect to win on Saturdays this fall if we don't win every single day, and that's something that I've challenged this team to do. We have some leaders who are really taking that to heed and trying to continue that message going forward. But again, that's what that means. So when you see that hashtag "Leave No Doubt," that's what it's talking about.
Well, all right, Coach. And one final parting shot before we leave. Obviously, with the COVID-19 situation, we're all trying to figure out what the new normal is as far as travel, hosting, and as the governor, there was a tip on the governor's second phase of reopening Florida, which would allow athletes to come back. How are you and the coaching staff preparing to make pretty much quick changes to adapt to whatever the new normal is?
Well, again, I think it starts with just trying to make sure that we're able to follow all the guidelines, the social distancing guidelines that we have set for ourselves or that have been set for us. What does that look like? What does it look like when you're trying to have a team meeting, with over 100 guys? Being able to distance those guys. How do we monitor their activity when they're away from the building? If everyone comes back and we test them all and they're negative, how do we keep it that way? I think that's the biggest piece, is trying to keep the team as safe as possible, because obviously when you're in a team sport, and a lot of guys are close to one another, it obviously increases the risk of spreading infection, and it's something that none of us want. And so that's what all our discussions have been about. We want to make sure that we are following those rules and guidelines whenever they decide to open it back up, whenever our administration feels like it's safe and appropriate to bring our student athletes back, we'll do so. It may not be on the timetable that the NCAA has set. That June 1st date probably won't apply to us. It'll probably be sometime after that, once we can all put our heads together and figure out what our new normal looks like from a coaching staff perspective, from a support staff perspective, and then from a player perspective. And so, again, we're just continuing to be diligent about figuring out what we do next. But again, I feel confident that we do have an administration that are on top of it, that are communicating with the commissioner of the conference, other athletic directors throughout the league, other presidents and chancellors throughout the MEAC, for us to decide what's best for all of our member institutions moving forward, because it won't be something that's just specific to FAMU. It has to be consistent with the other 8 members of this great conference that we're a part of, so that there's a level playing field. And so that's where we are right now. We actually had a meeting, just recently with all the head coaches to put some ideas on the table, and we'll continue to do so until we finalize what that new plan looks like, and then we're all able to go out there and play some football, hopefully this fall, and hopefully allow our fans a chance to see how these great institutions go to battle, because football and sports in general does bring that feel-good feeling. When we're in our homes, which is a great time to spend around family and rebuild some relationships and all those things. That sense of normalcy tends to come in the form of sports a lot of times. It gives us something to be proud of. It gives us something to cheer for. It gives us a chance to fellowship and network. And so I think that's why so many people are excited about the prospects of football coming back. So we want to do our part. Again, I encourage everyone to continue to social distance, continue to follow the guidelines, so that we don't have a spike in COVID-19, which may set us back. I think we can continue to move forward and progress, then we can put a plan together to be able to hopefully play some football this fall. But in the meantime, we'll continue to meet through Zoom, continue to stay at home and do the things we've been doing for the last 3 months.
All right, folks, you heard it straight from the horse's mouth from FAMU head coach Willie Simmons, eager to get his 3rd year underway. Coach, thank you for joining us. This has been HBCU Gameday Prime, for the first time in 4K.